New York City-centric issue, but the president has made this a national issue.
I actually want to move to a New York issue, if you don't mind, Blake, and I'd like to start with you. It would be about labor and Andrew Cuomo, who we saw got the AFL-CIO nod this week, which was sort of interesting because he is not supported by NYSUT, the teachers union, and also CSEA. So he's tried to sort of split public unions from private unions. And we should disclose that you represent a union, you work for a union, the Hotel Trades Council, which is one of those private unions. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I mean, look, obviously the labor movement is not completely monolithic, so he is better. The Attorney General and I think future governor has better relationships with some than others. What I think is sort of the larger issue here at play is that Andrew Cuomo understands very adeptly that the progressive voters of New York State are going to be with him. He is the Democratic nominee and has done a very good job tending to that base. And so now as he tries to build on what looks like it's going to be a very commanding victory, it's about appealing to these middle-of-the-road voters. And that's why you see him doing events in Nassau County with, I can't remember if it was the county exec or the controller,
yeah,
but it was a Republican.
Yeah, the county exec, Mangano.
Right, exactly. And, talking about property taxes is a very adept move. He's moving to kind of, make sure he gets these middle-of-the-road voters. And as he does that, that means that kind of the traditional elements of the progressive coalition are going to be less of a focus of the campaign, I think. But clearly he's got the AFL-CIO behind him. Labor's not going to be going with Carl Palladino or Rick Lazio anytime soon, so I think he'll be just fine. And
what do you think about it, Brendan? Is a little bit hypocritical here. He's at one time saying he wants property tax caps, he wants wage freezes for public employees, he supports SUNY empowerment, which is something that NYSUT does not support, for example. He wants all of these things that labor doesn't like, but that segment of labor. But on the other side, he wants things that he supports blue-collar labor, if you will, the trades, the RWDSUs of the world.
Playing to the trades, he's playing to the non-public unions, and going into the budget crisis that he's going to face if he's to be elected. And sitting here today, that's a big if. Everyone else is going to believe he's got it in the bag, and I just don't see it yet. And no one's placed a vote yet. But if he were to be the governor, there's a lot of budget problems facing the state, and they're going to have to make cuts. And those public unions are not prepared for that, and they don't want to deal with it.
Do you think, though, that Republican voters could get on board with him?
I think you're going to see a shift after the primary. You're going to see Republican voters come home, and it happens in every election cycle, whether it's for a Democrat candidate or a Republican candidate. They eventually come home. They're going to go and support their candidate.
Yeah, but if the enrollment is 5-3 statewide and the Democrats outweigh the Republicans, that not enough of them, even if every Republican comes home, it's still not enough.
Well, that's why he's trying to play to that middle and go to those unenrolled voters. But still, today, I'm not sure that he's got that in the bag. His support seems a mile wide and an inch deep today.
What about that Republican primary? Who's going to win?
I believe Rick Lazio wins.
Okay. Why do you say that? Because as of right now, it looks like the momentum is on Carl Palladino's side.
There's momentum out of Western New York for Carl Palladino, and to a certain extent, if the election were held today, he's the Western New York governor. He's not the governor of the rest of the state, because I don't see him getting that same support outside of Western New York.
Okay, Blake, which one?
I mean, it almost doesn't matter. I think if Carl Palladino is the candidate, I think that this is just a joke and a laugher, and some of the things that he's done and said, I think even our Republican friends in private moments will admit it's just a non-starter. And I think that that's why you're seeing the state Democratic Party going after Rick Lazio a lot and not so much Carl Palladino, because either Palladino becomes the candidate, which is just amazing, or Rick Lazio is spending all his time trying to beat down Palladino and is completely bloodied when he emerges as the nominee. So this is just all an absolute win-win for Cuomo. They've done a very, very good job, a very adept job of helping stoke this Republican primary. For the longest time, Rick Lazio has tried to kind of aim his fire at Andrew Cuomo, which he should be doing. It's a good strategy, but he hasn't been able to. And so rather than fighting Andrew Cuomo, he's fighting Carl Palladino. The Cuomo people are doing a very good job with this.
Could Republicans come home to Carl Palladino?
I don't see it happening. He's got a strong base out of Western New York. Outside of that, he doesn't have the following. And he has his emails and other problems from his past that have come out, and they come out in any greater disclosure of anything else, the man has a problem.
But Lazio hasn't used them against him yet. Why not?
Because go back to Blake's point, he's been ignoring him. He's been focusing on Andrew Cuomo.
Is that smart?
Well, you still have the problem of Western New York, but the rest of the state, people don't know who Carl Palladino is. He keeps talking about, I have $10 million and I'm going to spend $10 million, but he hasn't pulled the trigger yet.
Well, he's spent a far sight more than Rick Lazio has.
I understand that, but he hasn't pulled the trigger on some significant multi-million-dollar buy.
Well, we have just a month left
Yes.
before those primaries, and we shall see. I want to thank you, Brendan, for joining us. Also, Blake, thanks very much for joining us and making your
Thank you.
Capital Tonight debut.
Thank you very much for having me.
Take care.